In Kenya, before the colonizers' invasion, family was a small social unit then followed by the clan, which comprised of members of the families that intermarried. In those social groups, they exercised a three-ruled principle that helped them maneuver through life easily. And the three rules, namely, alone, I speak, together, we talk. Alone, I smile. Together, we laugh. Alone, I enjoy. Together, we celebrate. These principles, today, if we observe them in our communities, they are no longer observed. People probably hate each other, kill each other, and often others are jealous over their neighbor's possession. And all this hate was imposed to us by the white supremacy concept that introduced the measure of value such that if you want to acquire something, you then had to buy using money, which is contrary to our ancestors' practice, whereby, for example, one had to go to the market and exchange a bag of maize with a bag of beans that they were in need of. Everything was about trading between individuals versus individuals, clans versus clans, and community versus community. And this type of practice promoted a lot of positivity amongst our communities. No one was left behind. Everyone was motivated to working hard because they knew that they would acquire what they wanted through trading what they had. Unlike today, if for instance one had a cow and he needs a goat, then he cannot just trade for that without money because all the free market that our ancestors used were abolished by the white supremacy and mentality. Another thing, before the colonialist arrival, the government of our country, Kenya, was led by elders who were the head of their communities, and the law was the people of that community. If one committed a crime, that community together with their elders gathered to decide the fate of the criminal, and that made people respect the rule of their community because there was no favor in justice delivery, unlike today where one could go free even after committing an unforgivable crime, probably because they have money that they will use to buy their freedom. Again, today as a country, part of our suffering has been promoted by their negligence, or rather by our negligence of our culture, and one could say that we are a developing country, of which is true. But the question that arises is, how can we develop or rather grow without reminding ourselves of where we are coming from? It's not necessarily standing still and not embracing change, or rather transformation in our country, but accessing the principles and our virtues from the past so that we can be motivated by knowing where we came from and where we are going. Because failure to organize and plan from where we are coming from to where we are going, then we could end in a new man's land where nobody has or any idea of how we got there. The Western civilization adapted in our country to be our culture and forget our own came with a lot of evils in it. Just to mention, it brought corruption, it brought inequality, it brought biased judgment in our country, it brought immorality like my dress, my choice, which commenced on November 17, 2014. And before that, our ladies used to dress appropriately. Unlike today, they are walking almost naked. And one could ask a man whether they can or could marry a lady of such, and you obviously know the answer. It divided our country into two, the rich and the poor. It brought self-hate among our youths. It brought hate between neighbors. Today, 99% of the people are not willing to help one another. Even the ones that are residing in churches, those are the worst. That's why you find most of the youths are not in churches, because probably the church is not doing enough work as they pledge, or rather the youths are not resonating with the church. Western civilization also blindfolded us to an extent that we forget that when you walk alone, you go faster and cover short distance. But when we walk as a group, we will walk slow and cover a far distance. And that was among the principles of our forefathers. For instance, if you observe the Indians residing in Kenya today, they have no beggars in the street because they still use the latter principle, unlike the other groups whereby we have a lot of beggars in our country, or rather the streets. Before our ancestors used to discharge duties equally among their children, or rather the youths, and everybody could be kept busy. Unlike today, 99% of the youths are useless, and at some point not by their own free will, but because when we adopted the Western civilization, it started limiting the ability of our people, and one could see that the opportunities in our country is distributed unequally.